welcome. My name is Ash Desai from grade 8, and as I will be giving detailed summary on all the chapters of science, social science, maths, and Hindi. I have come up with my first video and my first summary that is on the crop production and management, which is the first science chapter of grade 8 and also the first biology chapter. So let's get started. So as the chapters about agriculture and crops, we have to know how was the agriculture born. So till 10,000 BC, people were nomadic. That basically means that they wandered in groups in search of food, water, and shelter, which are the three most important things in a person's life and the basic needs. So they ate raw fruits and vegetables wherever it was found. So once the vegetables and fruits were depleted in one region, they moved from one place to another. So that's why they were nomadic and wandered. And they also started hunting for animals for food and they ate it raw. So what led them to do agriculture and what led them to do settled life? One day they observed that when seeds were thrown in the soil and they came after a 10 to 15 days time, they saw that there were plants. How was this? They also knew that an adequate amount of water and sunlight was reaching them. So later, after these observations, they thought that there's no need of wandering here and there in search of food. They itself can grow the food. So what's the need of going here and there? And thus was born agriculture. So they cultivated the land and produced some other crops like rice, wheat, etc. So now we are know what is crops because the chapter is about crops, productions, and management. So when plants of the same type or kind are cultivated at one place on a large scale, it is called a crop. For example, a crop of rice means all the plants grown in the field are that of rice. A crop of wheat means that all the plants grown in that field are only of wheat. So next, types of crops. What are kharif crops? So there are of course three types of crops that I have listed here, and these three types of crops are basically in India. So we have to start with kharif crops. The crops which are sown in the rainy season are called kharif crops, and the rainy season is mostly from June to September period in India. As you know, there is high rainfall in places like Mumbai and the northeastern part. So paddy, maize, soybean, groundnut, and cotton are some example kharif crops, and you must should know the examples given for all the types of crops, as these are generally important during the examination. So rabi crops. The crops grown in the winter season, October to March period, are called rabi crops. Wheat, gram, pea, mustard, and linseed are some examples of rabi crops. Now side crops. This type of crop is not given an explanation in the book, but it's given a sentence if you read you will know that some plants are grown in the summer season, like some pulses and some plants. So desired crops are the crops grown in the summer season and they grow the longest time period, mainly from the period from March to June. These crops are mainly grown in the summer season during a period called side crop season. That means that as the summer season starts, you cannot directly grow the side crops. There's a period during the summer season called the side crop season. They require warm and dry weather as major growth period and longer day length for flowering. That means it is grown in summer season because they require warm and dry weather. The side crop comes between the rabi and kharif crop seasons, as you will be knowing, because the summer season falls between the rainy and the winter season, and it takes some months of the summer and some months of the rainy season. As I just told that it doesn't mean that all the months of summer will be used for this crop production. No. Some is used for summer and some months of rainy season. These crops also mature early. That's a good sign because there are many more crops which can be grown. Like there are three crops, and of course, a farmer would think that I will try to grow all the three crops in one year. So watermelon, muskmelon, cucumber, and bitter are some examples of desired crops. And this can be asked as an extra question out of the box examination. So let's go to next, the agricultural practices. The cultivation of crops involves several activities undertaken by farmers over a period of time. These activities are done in order to get a good produce or a good yield crops. These activities are tasked as referred or known as agricultural practices. So, if a farmer wants a very good yield of crops, then he has to follow all the seven practices, that is preparation of soil, sowing, adding manure and fertilizers, irrigation, protecting from weeds, harvesting, and storage. If one of them is missed, then of course it's gonna not give a good yield. So next we will be going to the first process, that's the preparation of soil. The process of loosening and turning the soil is known as preparation of soil. So this is a very important step, which is taken before a crop. So there are some steps that should be taken before a crop is grown, so that afterwards you can get a good crop yield. So it's the first step and one of the most important tasks of agriculture. So preparation of soil has two processes. First is the plowing or tilling, and the second one is leveling. So let's continue. Yeah, so next is plowing. So plowing or tilling. Plowing is the process of turning and loosening the soil, as you would be learning from lower classes. If the soil becomes loose, then the air circulation in soil is good, and the plants can get proper amount of air through the root. The root can also penetrate more deeper and go more deeper to the water level in the ground, as you would have learned in the early classes, and get the required amount of water. Another main purpose is, which is not mentioned here, and I would like to mention, is that the if the soil is well aerated, then it allows some microbes and even um, small organisms like worms to live. Worms like rhizobiums to live in the soil, which are good signs, as they produce good humus and give good humus to the soil. The second point is that since only a few centimeters of the top layer of the soil supports plant growth and has humus, turning the soil, being nutrient-rich soil, to the top so that the plants can use these nutrients, of course, more beneficially. The stilling or plowing is a very important part of cultivation of crops, and we will see another part of it, that is the leveling. But before that, we have to know some tools used for agricultural purposes of plowing. So the first one is plow. This is the most common, and you could have seen in every type of lands this being used. So this is being used since ancient times, like from the 10,000 BCE, when they found agriculture. They used this mostly for the plowing purposes. So this is made up of a wood and it's drawn by a pair of bulls of animals, or like horse or camels also can do it. So you can see here this, that the two bulls can pull it very easily, a pair of bulls. It contains a strong triangular iron strip called the plowshare. So here you can see the plowshare. The plowshare has sharp ends. So this sharp end get into the soil, um, turns it um, for the purpose of plowing. Then the main part of the plow is a long log of wood, which is called a plow shaft, as you can see here. The plow shaft is the connection of the plowshare and to the beam. Now we will know what is the beam. The beam is the log of wood which is kept on the head of the bull, which is used for pulling the plow. So there's a handle at one end of the shaft, and the other end is attached to a beam which is placed on the bull's neck. Yeah. So next is a hoe. It is a very simple tool which is used for loosening the soil, sometimes for removing the weeds too. You will know that even some machines also, or some tools are used for multi-purposes also. So this is a strong, it has a strong brooded bent plate, as you can see here. This bent plate is fixed to its ends, and it works like a blade. So when it goes like a blade, it gets into the ground, cuts it, and then turns it very nicely. And even this is pulled by animals. Now we will know a based machine-based tool used for plowing, that is known as cultivator. So nowadays, to save labor and time, machines are used for plowing. As you know that every aspect and every type of agricultural practices is also uses machines. Even this is nowadays used in machines. And cultivator is mostly used in large lands, mostly like Punjab and Haryana, because Punjab and Haryana have vast lands of fertile fields. There, it is grown in large, very very large scale. That's why tractors are used, cultivators. So for plowing, tractor-driven machines are used, known as cultivator, and it is done in large land cultivation, which cannot be done manually. There's a leveling, as I told. This is also a very important part. So the plowed field may have big pieces of stones, rocks, and crumbs. It is necessary to break them because after doing this, the field becomes leveled for other agriculture practices, which are very important also. So you know that after plowing, there will be crumbs or even stones will be there. We learn the soil profile previous classes. So of course you will be knowing that from the a horizon has some amount of rocks and stones present in that horizon. So after the turning is done, the crumbs come to the upper part of the soil on the surface, which may cause for the stop of aeration. So it is necessary for them to break these crumbs and rocks so that even the other agricultural practices can be done. Now the next is how leveling is done. So this is the land leveler. You can see here it has blades here which break all the crumbs and they make it a leveled land. So, and this is mostly connected to a cultivator or tractor or machine which pulls it. And this is also known as a land leveler. So next is sowing. The process of sowing the seeds, of putting the seeds in the field, is known as sowing. And of course, without sowing, a plant cannot be grown, as we know. So sowing is an important part of crop production. Sowing has two processes. That is the selection of seeds, which is important, and even the sowing is a very important part. Selection of seeds. Before sowing, good quality, clean, and healthy seeds of a good variety are needed, so they are selected. Farmers prefer to use seeds which give high yield, that means good produce. There is a good method for separating the good healthy seeds from the damaged ones, and you can check the activity in your book. It will be given that the seeds are immersed in a bowl of water, and you will notice that some seeds float on the water and some seeds go and sink to the bottom of the bowl. So the ones that float on the water are the damaged leaves. And why do they float? Any guesses? Yes, you may be right. It is because they are hollow. And how are they hollow? Because some insects or pests or some type of microorganism or some type of holes or damage is done to the seed. That's why it has become hollow and it is floating. Now let's go to the next slide, that is the traditional tool for sewing. So we have come to the sewing part now, and as we know what is sewing, so the traditional tool uses like a funnel. You can see here it's a funnel here, funnel, and this funnel has a sharp end here which pierces into the ground, and then seeds are put through this funnel which reaches the ground. But this is a very hard working and too much labor work, and it takes a lot of time. So this tool is used traditionally, and of course now traditional things are not used, machines are used. So next one we are going to see a machine that is called a seed drill. A seed drill, also called a hoe drill or seeder, is a device or a machine used in agriculture that sows seeds for crops by positioning them in the soil and burying them to specific depth. This ensures that the seeds will be distributed evenly. This is a very good machine as it keeps everything uniform. The seeds are kept at a uniform depth. That means all the seeds are kept at the same depth. Even they are kept at the same distance from each other, and even it makes sure that it is covered with the soil too on the top. So the seed drill source is the proper seeding weight and depth, as I have told, ensuring that the seeds are covered by soil. This saves them from being eaten by birds and or animals being dried up due to exposure to the sun. With seed drill machines, seeds are distributed in rows, rows and columns. It also saves the time and labor. And the most important is that it doesn't let overcrowding. Now we will see what will overcrowding do. So this is a seed drill. As you can see that these are the pipes through which the seeds are put, and then it is put into the ground. So now I'll be telling you the important measures and the conditions which should be in your mind while sowing. So the first one is that when seed is sown, it should be sown at appropriate distance. That means distance between all seeds are necessary to avoid overcrowding of plants. Any guesses why overcrowding should not be there? Yeah, you know that plants require sunlight, nutrients, and water. And when the seeds are overcrowded, they fight and compete with each other for sunlight, nutrients, and water. And at last, all of them will grow unhealthy. So at times, people even have to remove to prevent overcrowding the plants. Now, when the seeds are sown, it should be covered with soil so that it's not eaten by animals or it's not birds or it's not blown away by the wind, which is a common problem if you see it's not done properly. The seed should also be sown at correct depth so that it's not too deep, not too much on the surface of the soil. And this is why I told the depth is also very important. So the next process, yeah, before going to the process, we'll learn extra knowledge thing that is transplanting of seedlings. You will also it will be there in textbook that some plants are very weak at their birth and they need extra care. Thus, they are grown under care and supervision of nurseries. When they become a seedling, the plants are transplanted into the field manually. Paddy is a plant which is first grown in nursery and then is transplanted, and it will be there in your book also. So this is done in many areas of our country too. So next is manure. Manure is an organic substance obtained from the decomposition of plant or animal waste. Farmers now the question is how can it be done? It is very easy. You can even make a manure yourself. So farmers dump the plant and the animal waste in pits at open places and allow it to decompose. The decomposition is caused by some microorganisms like bacteria. The decomposed matter is known as the organic matter. The process of adding manure to the soil is known as manuring. And why manure is good for the plant? You know that every plant or everything has nutrients. So the animal waste and even plant waste have the same nutrient that they had before being a waste. So after the decomposition, still they have the nutrients in them. So once these matters are these organic matter or manure is put into the the plant takes all the humus and all the nutrients present in them. So the process of adding manure is very important, very important, and we will see why is it important in the next slides. So improper, insufficient manuring results in growth of weak plants, as we know, as I told. Advantages of manure include it enhances water holding capacity of the soil. That means manure doesn't itself only help the plant; it also helps the soil and the land. It makes the soil porous due to which exchange of gases become easy. That means it makes the land loamy because it also helps the water holding capacity and also helps in exchange of gases. It also increases the number of friendly microbes, as of course you know how manure helps, and it also improves the texture of the soil. So next we will go into vermicomposting. Of course, you would have learned this in grade 6. It was there, vermicomposting. Vermicomposting is a product of decomposition process using various species of worms, usually red wigglers, which is known as red worms, white worms, and other earthworms to create a mixture of decomposing vegetable or food waste, bedding materials, and vermicast. So, what is this? Let me make you understand. So, how manure is done? Manure is acted basically a certain type of bacteria works on the decomposing matter. But in vermicompost, actually in manure we don't bring any bacteria or worms. But in vermicomposting, the process is done by worms instead of microorganisms like bacteria. So here you will know that people rear worms also. So people rear red worms mostly, and when the red worms grow to a certain age, they are given the waste materials like plant waste and animal waste. Then when you give them in the next 10 to 15 days, you will notice that it has made that waste into a compost. And because it is done by worms, it's called vermicomposting. So next, there's fertilizers. Now, even this is a part of how to enhance the nutrients in the soil. So, a fertilizer is any material of or any chemical, if it as it's known, is any type of material of natural or synthetic origin that is applied to soil or to plant tissues to supply plant nutrients. So you will be knowing the differences between the fertilizers and manure. That manure gives humus and fertilizers give the plant nutrients. So fertilizers are man-made, chemically synthesized inorganic salts which are rich in a particular nutrient or sometimes in a group of nutrients like NPK. Fertilizers are prepared in factories, as we know, because it's man-made. Fertilizers does not provide any type of humus to the soil. Some examples of fertilizers are urea, ammonium sulfate, superphosphate, potash, NPK. Nitro is the full form of NPK is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and many more. Hmm. So the next is the problems with fertilizers. So fertilizer chemicals, as I told, that means excessive use of this can damage the plants. As you would have learned in many places that it causes many pollution to them. Excessive use of fertilizers make the soil less fertile also. So that means if you don't use fertilizer, the soil will lose its fertility, and if you use it excessively, also it will lose the fertility. So of course, it should be used in its extent. Nowadays, it is also becoming a reason for water pollution. You would have learned that it is being mixed with water, and many marine animals die. Thus, fertilizers are being replaced with organic matter, or the field is left uncultivated, which is fallow, we say, or some for some time between the two crops. Now, we will be seeing why do we need manure and fertilizers. Soil supplies mineral nutrients to crops, as we know. These nutrients are essential for the growth of plants. In certain areas, farmers grow crop after crop in the same field, as we know, rabi crop, then carrot crop, rabi crop, then carrot crop, and sometimes in between side crops. The field is never left uncultivated or fallow. So, continuous cultivation of crops makes the soil poor in nutrients because continuously the plants take on the nutrients present in the soil. Therefore, farmers have to add manure or fertilizers to the field so that the soil is replenished or is renewed with the nutrients so that again the plants can use it to another extent. Now we'll be seeing the difference between fertilizer and manure. So fertilizer is an inorganic salt, that is an inorganic chemically made man-made salt, whereas manure is a natural substance obtained by decomposition of cattle dung, human waste, and plant residues. Fertilizer is prepared in factories, whereas manure can be prepared anywhere in fields, lands, or even any type of area. A fertilizer doesn't provide any humus to the soil, whereas manure provides a lot of humus to the soil, as I told. And fertilizers are very rich in plant nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, while manure is less rich in for plant nutrients. Now you will be thinking the last 2 points that which one to use. Now, in case of humus, manure has more, but in case of fertilizers have more nutrients. So that is why it's best to use them equally, so that the plant gets humus along with nutrients. So that's the best to mix them both and use. Now, the crop rotation. This is a very, very, very useful process which is used in most of the northern India areas. So, this is another method of replenishing the soil with nutrients through crop rotation. So, you would have learned last year about the rhizobium bacteria, and now we are again going to learn about these rhizobium bacteria, how it works in crop rotation. So this can be done by growing different crops alternatively. You now will be thinking that anyway it's rabi crops and kharif crops. But what here we are telling is that earlier farmer in northern India used to grow legumes, leguminous plants as we know that is pulses, as fodder in one season and wheat in the next season or any other season also you can do a rice or any type of the main, but leguminous plants are also done. Now you see why. This helps in replenishment of the soil with nitrogen because rhizobium bacteria fixes the atmospheric nitrogen in a usable form which can be used in plants, and the rhizobium bacteria is also present in root nodules in leguminous plants. Now let me make you understand. So, how will rhizobium bacteria work when it is present in that soil? And how will that heat come to the soil when leguminous plants grow? If you remember last year, that rhizobium bacteria live in the nodules of the roots of leguminous plants. That is why leguminous plants are growing, the rhizobium bacteria start to live in the field and they increase the nitrogen amount of the soil so that the next crop can use the nitrogen. So farmers are very much encouraged to adopt this practice. Now we'll be seeing irrigation. As we know, all the living beings need water, and mainly plants. All living beings need water to live. Water is important for proper growth and development, but there are many more reasons why water is needed for plant especially. Plant contains nearly 90% of the water. Water is essential because germination of seed doesn't take place under dry conditions. As you know, nothing can grow under dry conditions and without water. Water also protects from the crop from both frost and hot currents. This is a very, very important point, as very hot currents and frost can damage the plant. So water is required. So this is a very important point. To maintain the moisture of the soil for healthy crop growth, fields have to be water regularly. So not only for the plants, even for the soil, so that for soil can maintain that moisture is also important. So what is irrigation now? The process of supply of water to the crops at regular intervals is called irrigation. The time and frequency of the irrigation varies from crop to crop, soil to soil, and season to season. How season to season? Of course, you will be knowing that in summer season, water has to be given more regularly because the process of evaporation. Now, soil. Now, the clay soil requires more, less irregular intervals because it has the water holding capacity. But sandy soil doesn't. Now, if you go to crop, some crops require very high water, where some need less. As we know, that is the rainy season. That is the kharif crops need more water. Now we go to next, the traditional method of irrigation, that is the moat, rahat, chain pump, and hickley. Now we'll be learning them in explanation. So the water available in well, lakes, and canals is lifted with different methods in different regions for taking it to the field. Cattle or human labor is used in these methods because it's traditional method, and even machines will be used. Don't worry. That will come in modern methods because traditional methods are traditional uses that are old uses. These methods are very very cheaper because no machines are used, all labor but less efficient. The various traditional ways are moat, that's the pulley system. Moat or pulley system is a manual irrigation method. By this method, water is directly taken out of wells with the help of pulley and is used to irrigate the field. This is the most common method. Of course, you will be seeing that. And now you'll be seeing pictures too so that you can understand it more betterly. So, now the traditional method which has a continuous rahat, that is lever system. In this method, water is drawn out of the wells by animals. Animals like cow, buffalo, oxen, etc. are connected to a wheel. Animals move and rotate the wheel to draw the water from the well, as we know what a lever system is. The lever is you move to draw water. The chain pump. This is a very smart technique. The chain pump is a type of water pump in which several circular discs are positioned on an endless chain. One part of the chain dips into the water and the chain runs through a tube, slightly bigger than the diameter of the disc. As the chain is drawn up the tube, water becomes trapped within the disc and again lifted and is again discharged at the top. So, if you think a circle has around 7 discs, then each of the 7 will fill and again refill. Now, we'll in Higby, that's the last irrigation method. In this method, a bucket and a rope is connected to a pole in order to collect water, as you can see, and is poured by the human labor into the field. This method does a lot of water wastage and it requires a lot of labor and is not efficient too. So it is not used now. As you can see, what's the difference in moat and Higby? In moat, they collect the water from this um, um, small bucket and fill into a large bucket and then go and irrigate. Whereas here they just remove the water and just flow it anywhere they want, so the water flows and goes into the land. And by the time it goes, very less water will reach. So this is a very lot water wastage, and that's why this is not used at all, mainly in those areas of water scarcity. So these are the pictures. This is a moat, as you can see that the crops are grown in the side, and the well is there. So the well is the water is taken, drawn, and then it's be given. Now you will see a chain pump. So chain pump, you can see there are um, in chain pump you would have seen that there are there were a lot of discs which were used in the water was collected and again given out. So now the sprinkler system. So you would have seen this in many of the parks whenever you go, mainly in big cities where gardens are kept for beautiful designs. These types of systems you'll see very frequently nowadays. So this system is more useful on uneven land where sufficient water is not available, because it gives a uniform water to each side. The perpendicular pipes, as you can see here, the perpendicular pipes have rotating nozzles. See, these are nozzles from which the water is spreading out. So these nozzles rotate and then are joined to the main pipeline, and at regular intervals they give out water. When water is allowed to flow through the main pipe under pressure with the help of a pump, it escapes from the rotating nozzles and it gets sprinkled on the crop as if it is raining. Sprinkler is very useful for lawns, coffee plantations, several other crops. As I told, it is used for gardens and crop plantations, several crops. Now, it's time for drip irrigation. This is very useful. In this system, the water falls drop by drop directly near the roots, as you can see, drop by drop it's coming down. That's why it's called drip irrigation. It is the best technique for watering fruit plants, gardens, and trees. And in this, water is not at all wasted, and it is a boon. It's a very useful in the regions where available water is poor. This helps a lot for the places like Rajasthan and Gujarat. Now, why should weeds be removed? Now we have come to the part, the protection from weeds. So now we have to know why weeds should be removed. So what are weeds? First of all, weeds are undesirable, unwanted plants growing along with the crop, and these don't need seeds. These have spores which germinate automatically near the plants. The removal of weeds is known as weeding, and weeding is necessary since weeds compete or fight for crop plants for water, nutrients, space, and light. Now we knew that what can overcrowding do. This is the same thing. Now in overcrowding, we have to um, uniformly put seeds having distance in between. But weeding, it happens without our knowing. So once the plants, the weeds start to grow, they have to be cut, and thus they affect the growth of the crop. Some weeds even interfere even in harvesting, and of course, some are even poisonous for animals and human beings. So now, protection from weeds. Farmers have adopted many ways to remove weeds and control their growth. So the first of them is tilling before sowing of crops. So tilling, that is also known as plowing. As you know, turn the soil so that weeds are uprooted and are killed, and which dry up and then get mixed with the soil. And if after tilling also given plants are growing, they grow, the best time for removing weeds is before they produce flowers and seeds. So the manual removal includes physical removal of seeds by uprooting them or cutting them close to the ground from time to time. This is done with the help of khurpi. Of course, khurpi, sickle, and all of those tools mostly used. A seed drill is also used to uproot weeds. We know what is a seed drill. We learned that it helps in sowing. It can also be used in uprooting weeds. So protection from weeds. Weeds are also controlled by using chemicals called weedicides, and of course you would have learned this. One example of weedicide is given here, that is 2,4-D. These weedicides are sprayed in the fields to kill the weeds, but they do not damage the crop. That's the best thing. The weedicides are diluted with water. That means they are not concentrated, and they are mixed with water so that they are less harmful to the extent needed, and sprayed in the field with a sprayer. As already mentioned, the weedicides are sprayed during the vegetative growth of plants, during flowering and seed formation. Spraying of weeds may affect the health of farmers as they're chemicals, so they use they should use these chemicals very carefully, and they should always cover their nose and mouth with a piece of cloth or any type of mask during spraying of these chemicals. And you can see here that they are spraying here. This picture also done in textbook C. You can see that they are wearing a mask, which is very essential. Now, harvesting. So here comes the ending part of the crop production, that's harvesting. Harvesting is the process of cutting of crops after it is mature and gathering of ripe crops from the field. But that doesn't mean that the process after harvesting there's nothing. After harvesting, you have to take care of the all hard work you have already done. So, in harvesting, crops are pulled out or cut for close from the ground. It usually takes 3 to 4 months for a cereal crop to mature. As you can see here, that they're cutting it, but this is a very time-taking process because you can see here that there are so many crops growing. It's really time-taking. It will take around 1 week of cutting the whole ground. So it's a time-taking process. If you do it manually, harvesting in our country is either done by manually by sickle or by machine called harvester. So sickle, you will be seeing the picture of sickle. What is it? So this is a sickle. You can see here. This is a sickle. So this sickle is used for cutting. Now, what is this? This is a harvester. This machine is a harvester because it's helping harvesting. Now, threshing and winnowing. This is an important part. Now, once you have cut all the crops. Now, how should you remove the grains from the stem, or what is called the shaft? So threshing is the process of loosening the edible part of the grain from this. One more point, sorry. The threshing and winnowing is in grade 6. So of course you would know this, and this is something that you have been learning. If you learned the chapter separation of substances, and it was there in grade 6. So threshing and winnowing is part of that chapter. And threshing is the process of losing the edible part of the grain from the straw to which it is attached. Of course, you will be remembering. In the harvested crop, the grain seeds need to be separated from the chaff. The chaff is the stem. This process is called threshing. Threshing, they beat the stalks, the chaff on a hard surface so that the grains get loosened and they come out. This is carried out with the help of a machine called combiner, also, which in fact is a harvester as well as a thresher. So combine is used for harvesting as well as for threshing, which is very useful too. So winnowing. Now what is winnowing? Now after you have got the grains, there are chances with the grains that there will be light husks or lightweight things. So what is this? The winnowing is the process by which chaff is separated of husk is separated from the grain. Farmers with small holdings of land do the separation of grain and chaff by winnowing. They go to a certain height and then they let the wind to blow into um, the grains that they have kept. So and they then tilt the any container in which they have kept the grain, which makes the husk to fly away and makes the seed to fall down. So because the chaffs are lightweight, they blow away. Now threshing and winnowing, you can see here that they are beating, doing threshing here, and the grains are loosened. Here you can see the direction during where the direction is going, the husk is also going, but the grain cannot go because grain is more heavier and it's not blown away. So the seeds come down and they get grain, and now this is thresher, thresher and harvester, which is known as combine, as it does combined work. Now, harvesting festival. After 3 to 4 months of all the hard work that the peasants and the farmers have done, the work comes to an end. They have harvested the crops which they were waiting. All their hard work have borne beautiful fruits. They can see the golden fields with grain laden crops. Fills the farmer with, of course, joy. You should ask the grandfathers or great grandfathers who are farmers um, how would they enjoy and celebrate when it is the time for the harvest. They Now the farmers can enjoy, celebrate, and relax from the past season what they have done. The period of harvest is mainly associated with many festivals and great joy. Um, some of the festivals are Pongal, Baisakhi, Holi, Diwali, Nabani, and Bihu, as it's given in textbook. Special festivals that are harvested. Yeah, men and women celebrate with the festivals with the great enthusiasm. After all, it's the time of enjoyment. Now, after all the enjoyment, one last part is the storage of grains. And if this is not done, all the enjoyment will go in waste. And all the hard work will go in waste. So if it's not stored, then of course it can be attacked by many things which we will be seeing. Storage of produce is an important task. The storage of grains is very important. If the harvested grains are to be kept for longer time, they should be kept safe from moisture, insects, rats, and microorganisms. Why moisture? Moisture can lead to the growth of fungus. The harvested grains have moisture after all the harvesting. So the harvested grains have to be dried. So that's why for the drying process they have to be kept in the sunlight for some time so that the moisture is reduced. This prevents the attack of insect pests, bacteria, and fungi which may grow and damage the crops. Next, how to store grains. Farmers store grains in jute bags or metallic bins. However, large-scale storage of grains is done in silos and granaries to protect them from pests like rats and insects. Silos are large, big containers where grains are stored, as you can see in the next slide. I will be showing in the pictures. Grains was also filled with gunny bags and were kept in granaries. Dried neem leaves are used for storing grains at home because they don't have the facility to store in silos or granaries. For storing large quantities of grains in godown, specific chemical treatments are required to protect them from pests and microorganisms. So this is silos, as you can see, these are very, very big, large containers. Um, and this is granaries. Granaries are fully filled with gunny bags, here you can see, which are filled with grains. So here we come to the last part of the chapter, the food from animals. We know that, like plants, even animals also provide us with different kinds of food. Many people living in coastal areas consume fish as a major part of the diet, like Bengal in our West Bengal in our country. Just like there are many processes in crop production, similarly, animals also reared at home or in farms are also and are given proper food, shelter, and care. So even rearing has several processes. And when animals are reared on a large scale for their meat, fiber, milk, eggs, or other products, it is known as animal husbandry. And it is time for the end of our first summary. And most welcome and very thank you for watching me so patiently and hearing my explanation. So I hope you liked my video. If you like, then please share it with all your friends and you like it, and tell all your other friends to also subscribe it and click the bell icon so so that even they can get the latest summaries of all the chapters. If you have any doubt or queries in this chapter, you can post it in the comment section. I will of course be there to help you out. And if you want any suggestions on any other chapter, I will be sending that suggestions in that chapter's summary. Thank you a lot. See you in my next video.